Welcome to JustWannaQuilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School, where we explore all kinds of things, stories about quilting, tools, field trips, maybe some famous quilters stop by, and, of course, a little bit of copyright thrown in just for fun. I'm Elizabeth Townsend-Guard, your host. I'm a law professor at Tulane University Law School. I also hold 2 fellowships right now, one at the Business School and one at the Newcomb Institute at Tulane. And I just want to quilt. All right, so this episode is talking with Angelique Thomas, who is of the Innocence Project New Orleans. And we talked to her about the organization and COVID-19 and the prisons and what's happening to their clients in prison and their efforts to make masks. This was recorded on April 28th, 2020, and here we are. I like that about our world. Like we're all in Zoom, but we're like, how do you raise your hand in Zoom? I don't know.
Am I doing this right? Exactly. I have really, truly been enjoying the videos of people who just like don't have pants on or just like went to the restroom.
So true. It's just life.
Terrible.
You know? It's just the humanity of all of it. Well, cool. Well,
I do appreciate that. We're all figuring it out together, and there's like a lot of
and I love that like there's no boundaries anymore. Like nobody's wearing makeup anymore. There's kids running about, cats jumping in. Like it's just, that work-home balance thing, it's gone. It's just, it was not really there to begin with, but like, but now it's really gone. It's really quite lovely,
It's true.
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens, how we get back to formality.
Yeah, I don't think we've quite figured that out at IPNO yet, what that's going to look like for us, but we're trying to figure it out.
Yeah. And I'm amazed at like even fancy people, like how messed up their backgrounds are, and nobody lives the Martha Stewart life. That's what we've learned,
They really don't.
It's quite lovely. I like it. I feel less pressure, So, okay, cool. Well, we're gonna try to go about half hour. These interviews are kind of short and fast, and we start with a really simple question, which I know the answer to, which is tell me your name and where you're calling from.
Hi, I'm Angelique Thomas, and I'm calling from New Orleans, Louisiana.
Awesome. And what's your first memory of someone sewing or quilting in your life? We always start with that question, too.
So I actually don't have that in my life. There's nobody in my family who sews. In fact, I was recently given my great-grandmother's sewing kit, not because I sewed, but because nobody else did.
Else wanted it.
Crafty and I was most likely to do something with it. So I've been crafting for a long time. I make costumes, I make muses' shoes. I do things like that. But I actually only learned how to sew about 3 weeks ago.
Interesting.
Actually, about a month ago. I borrowed a friend's sewing machine to make sure it was something that was manageable. And I watched a lot of YouTube videos. And I started making masks.
Amazing. So cool. So who are you making masks for?
Innocence Project New Orleans, where I work, we are making masks we partnered with the Department of Corrections to make masks for incarcerated folks and for staff who interact with incarcerated people in the prisons. So what we've been seeing is that the prisons are really the perfect vector for spreading COVID-19. And so we have been working with the prisons, with the Department of Corrections directly to try to get as many masks as possible to try to slow down the spread. And we're calling it Flatten the Curve in prisons.
Wow, it's amazing. Okay, tell me a little bit more about I know about it, but for our listeners who don't, tell us a little bit more about what the Innocent Project is. What was your life like before this thing?
Sure. So Innocence Project New Orleans is a small nonprofit. We've freed 36 people since we were founded who'd served a total of, I think, 873 years for crimes that they didn't commit. So my role, I'm a social worker. I'm actually the only social worker in the office. And so my role is client services, which is a very broad term that means everything from working with our free clients on setting their lives back up, working with their families and what to expect, and also checking in with our incarcerated clients and working with them, both as they're preparing for release and also just to help them maintain hope while they're in prison.
Very interesting. And how many clients do you, how does your nonprofit work exactly? So how does it, Tell us a little
people
bit about
write
that.
to us. We only take applications by letter, and we only take them directly from the person who is wrongfully incarcerated. So I think we have about 5,000 applications that we've received. So it's a pretty extensive backlog. We have about 30 active cases right now, and I think we have a couple hundred people on our wait list, meaning cases where we want to fully investigate the case and we just don't have the resources or staff to take them on fully.
So once one gets done, you can add from the wait list the next client kind of thing.
Exactly.
And if I write to you, what happens? Can you take us a little bit through that process of like what you're, I don't know what you're looking for. Like,
Sure.
Tell me a little bit more about that part.
So people write to us, and they can write to us literally just a letter that says, I'm wrongfully convicted, please send me an application. So we have a pretty extensive application that we've put together. We work and have trained directly with some of the called inmate counsel substitutes, basically jailhouse lawyers at the prison. So we've trained them on our application process so that they have a sense of what we're looking for as well. So folks who are inside, if they have access to inmate counsel substitute at the law libraries inside, they can work directly with them. Or we always say, if you aren't comfortable working with them for whatever reason, that's fine. We take applications directly from folks as well. You write basically anything you can tell us to help us look into your case. So obviously the basics of what parish, what file number, if you know anything about the police who investigated the case, information about witnesses, anything that you do know about the crime or that you've picked up on through the courts process, because the folks that we're working with aren't innocent. They don't have information about the crime generally, but they've picked, we ask them what they've learned about while going through the courts.
Yeah.
We have a unbelievably fantastic case manager named Hui, who reviews every single application that comes in and grades it. So we have 2 different grades. We have DNA cases and non-DNA cases, and we actually take both. So there's some Innocence projects that only work on DNA cases
because they're so cut and dry in terms of why only
relatively.
DNA cases? Because you can just be like,
sure,
that DNA
they're
didn't match.
relatively cut and dry,
Yeah.
right? They don't involve the types of investigations that we sometimes get into, where we're looking to dig up witnesses from maybe 30 or 40 years ago who are very difficult to find, or we're looking for court records, or we're looking for samples, or we're looking for fingerprints, right?
Yeah.
I think our two of the 3 most recent cases that we've looked at, the clients were exonerated because fingerprints came back matching somebody else.
Wow.
Fingerprints that had either been at the crime scene and had never been run, or had been run when the databases weren't as comprehensive as they are now. And so when they were finally ordered to run the fingerprints, within an hour, they've come back matching somebody else. So sometimes it's that fast.
That's craziness. So, and these are people that, without your services, would just stay in jail for long periods of time.
They would die in prison.
They would die in prison.
Right. We take only life sentences or terms of years that are significant enough that they're essentially life sentences. But Louisiana is the life without parole capital of the United States. And so almost all of our clients would die in prison.
Oh, that's terrible. It's remarkable. The work you're doing is really remarkable. And so these are people that are in prison now. Who are you giving? Tell me more about sort of the masks and sort of what the situation is, and sort of what's going on? Tell me about that part.
Sure. So with the masks, we had a wonderful company called Goth Corona reached out to us and provided masks for our freed clients. So we dropped those off to all of our freed and exonerated clients. And then we started thinking about our incarcerated clients who have been writing to me and talking about how they're petrified.
Right.
They live in dorms, generally about 80, 85 people.
Right.
The bunk beds are about 2 to 3 feet apart from each other. There's no social distancing in prisons. It's impossible. It's physically impossible. So when we're talking about protecting our incarcerated clients, we've been doing things like, from the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis, right? We've been sending in extra funds if people need to buy soap. If they, need to maintain contact with their families, they're trying to facilitate that because there's no visitation right now, but you can still send letters and paid email through the service called JPay. So we've been following up with our clients constantly, trying to figure out what's going on inside the prisons. And what they were telling us is that there wasn't sufficient PPE, personal protective equipment, right? So about, 3-4 weeks ago, I think we started thinking, well, hold on a second, maybe we could get masks to our clients.
Right.
So I called the Department of Corrections, honestly, just kind of thinking, might as well. And I asked them, and they said, well, no, you can't actually provide masks to individual clients. Like, we can't just send them into our specific clients.
Right.
But if you wanted to partner with us, we are accepting donations of masks for incarcerated folks and for the staff. And really, the staff, when you think about it, are the ones who are going in and out of the prisons, right? They're the ones potentially bringing the virus in. And then if it's running right throughout the prison system, they're bringing it back to their communities, their families, right?
And they didn't have any protective.
Yeah, we started fundraising directly for DOC. Yeah. And I know in the past few weeks they've started distributing some masks they've made, but even if you have 1 or 2 masks per person, we're talking about people who, when I go out to the grocery store, I go out to run errands of some kind on that rare occasion when I leave my house now. I put on my mask. When I come home, I take the mask off. I put it right in the laundry, right? And I wash it every time I go out. You can't do that when you live in a dorm with 85 people. Even if you're wearing a mask 24/7, you just have one, you just have 2, you're not actually going to be able to maintain it. And then if you're washing it constantly, the wear and tear is pretty extreme.
Right. So what are you doing? So tell us. So I know exactly what. So we're JustWannaQuilt. So we have a lot of questions. Like what style are you using? Like how did you gear up? Who's making these? Like tell us what you're doing with all this.
So initially, the Department of Corrections had asked for fabric-only masks, so they didn't want any sort of elastics or metal nose pieces.
Yeah.
So we were working with SOAS to produce ones with the ties.
Yeah, like surgical mask style, the pleated style masks.
The pleated style and the I think the Olsen ones with more of like the V shape up top. Mostly we've been doing the pleated rectangular masks.
They're easy.
They're easier
and they fit. I mean, what we're finding, you probably found this too, is that they are so much easier to just be universal and fit. Like you don't have to. Olsen masks are a little more fussy in terms of where your ears are versus
Exactly. And these are going into the system, right? They're going to be for all sorts of people. One of the biggest outbreaks in the prisons right now is the women's prison.
Oh, interesting.
And so, there's female staff, there's male staff, incarcerated folks are male and female, and non-binary. So we wanted to get something that could really go to wherever the need was. Yeah. So we people for the fabric ties. Last week, actually, the Department of Corrections reconsidered their guidelines, and now they're allowing us to use elastic as well,
that's good.
which has been fantastic because it's so much faster. It's so much easier.
The ties.
So we've been doing both. Yeah, they're not fun.
No, they're not fun. No, seriously, not fun. Not fun. Yes, I think that will be the theme of the yes. Okay, so you're making Olsen masks and surgical masks with ties and now with elastic. Who's making them and how many are you? Sort of, what's your process of? And then are they all kinds of fabric, or they have to be a certain kind of fabric, or sort of what happened there?
We've asked for 100% cotton, thicker cotton blends in multiple layers as well.
Like 2 layers?
2, preferably 3 has been what we've been going for. So I've been making 3-layer masks. We have, I'd say, probably about 20 people so far have reached out to us and are making like large quantities of masks for us. We have about 700 pledged right now, which we're pretty excited about. Yeah. So we'll see.
And any fabric, like it doesn't matter what fabric you use, or do you have to have a certain kind? You know what I mean? In terms of like prints, like does it matter what it looks like, or do you?
It doesn't really. Since the vast majority of the incarcerated population is men, we were asking folks to, as much as possible.
It's really hard.
I have to say. Really, it was tricky.
Yeah.
But one of our partners was Brick Rack, who donated fabric to us, and we're really remarkable about calling and saying, describing the fabric over the phone. We're like, "You think this would work? Do you think that would work?" So we have a pretty good stock right now.
Oh, that's great.
I have a very nice tractor print for the lining that I've been using, and some sort of simpler prints.
Yes. It's so funny because we've been making masks, and my husband, who's lovely, was like, we need a little bit more masculine fabric. He kept saying masculine fabric, which is kind of like irritating me. But then I look down, and I'm like, yeah, well, everything I have is like flowers and like
yes,
like,
bumblebees.
Like, I chose
it's
all
so
of it.
Cute.
That's right. I'm like, flowers are universal.
That's true.
No, but it's not true. So that's interesting. And then, so you have about 20 volunteers. You've got 700. How many are in the prison? What's your goal in terms of, and how many masks are you trying to make per person? Like, I imagine there's like kind of giving it out, washing them, kind of like, how many are you trying to get to?
There's about more than 30,000 people incarcerated.
Oh my goodness. That's way too much. In New Orleans?
Yes. In Louisiana. Yeah. So we know IFNOA's not going to get to that number. We know that. We would love to. If anybody has 30,000 masks that they'd be interested in donating, let me know. That would be wonderful. But really at this point, one, we're trying to obviously make as many masks as we can. We're also just trying to make people aware of how large the problem is. Yeah. So we originally set our goal at, we just sort of like tossed a number out there and picked 8,000. And we picked that because there's about 8,000 people who are either incarcerated at or work at Angola, which is the biggest maximum security prison in the country. And are you focused on Angola right now? Is that like, where are your clients? Are they everywhere, or are you focused on a particular institution? We are not allowed to donate for one particular institution. Most of our clients are at Angola, but the Department of Corrections is going to make the final decision about where the masks go. Interesting. Very interesting. Hold on. My law student who contacted you is here. So she's just finishing it's finals. So she's just finishing. Oh, gosh. See if I know. Hi. Hi.
So we're just talking about the prisons and Angola and masks. Now, and Haley, so I'm so sorry that so for our listeners, Haley has probably just finished your final exam. Did you finish your final exam and jump on?
Yes, 1 of 3.
Oh, goodness. You're very
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So is there any concern with the ties, or like, is there any restrictions? Like, I don't know anything about prisons. So, were they worried about ties being used as weapons or any weirdness? Like, it was fine. Like, if people want to make and donate to you, I guess the question is, are there any restrictions they should be aware of? There aren't currently any restrictions. We're still saying no metal nose pieces just to make it a little bit simpler. Yeah. But honestly, at this point, my understanding is the Department of Corrections' biggest concern is people dying en masse of COVID-19. Interesting. And you're doing 3 layers because you're not doing a filter pocket because it would be hard to figure out. That's why you're doing the three layers. Is that right? Exactly. That's exactly right. Interesting. We can accept them with filter pockets as well. I just don't think that there is going to be that much access to filters. If staff receive some of the masks, filters they might be able to, but filters it's just not confusing too. Available. Haley's been our filter. It's so confusing. So
yes, there's so much out there. It's like, should you use a coffee filter, or should you cut up a vacuum bag? Should you cut up an AC filter? It's blue shot towels is another one that I've seen. We've seen those. Yeah, we got a lot.
All right. Well, this is so very interesting. How are your clients doing? Are they getting any masks? Like, it seems very random. Like, unless you get to like a max of 30,000, you won't know if your clients have masks. Is that right? We're definitely not the only source of masks for the DOC, thankfully. When we started, our clients were reporting that they did not have masks. Now they seem to be sort of starting to filter through. So the Department of Corrections has said that they've given 2 to every incarcerated person so far. That's great. But obviously that isn't going to be sufficient for starters, and they're going to need to be replaced pretty regularly because they really need to wear them all day and all night. All day long. And then do they wash them? Are they putting them in the wash, or like, are they collecting them and washing them, or not? My understanding is people are hand washing their own masks. Oh, well, that's not good either. Right? I mean, it's the best you can, but like that heat, I've heard, is the heat of the dryer is what's killing. So we're really at a harm reduction point right now. Yeah, that's our goal, and we're trying to figure out, what is basically the fastest way to get more masks into the prisons to protect as many people as possible. But at the end of the day, we're talking about the perfect situation for COVID-19 to spread. It's
groups of people in tight quarters.
They can't leave.
Hygiene is different. They can't leave, right? There's sick people. There's people with chronic conditions. There's a whole range of folks.
Right. And I imagine mostly African American. I imagine tons of hypertension and other sort of all this sort of stuff. And then imagine medical care that's not going to be like, it's going to overwhelm the medical care of the prison very quickly too, right?
Correct. Yes.
Have they had cases in the prisons here in Louisiana, or sort of what's the status so far of that?
They have. I don't have the exact numbers, but the last I checked, I think it was about 115 cases that had been confirmed amongst incarcerated folks.
Right, because they're not doing widespread testing either, I would imagine.
They're not doing widespread testing. A warden of a prison and a medical director actually both just died, I think, last.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, so it's spreading amongst staff. And again, it's the same issues for staff who are coming in and out of the prison or exposed to the same, or they're being exposed to the virus themselves. So I think that the fact that the warden and the medical director of a prison in Avoyelles just died has really woken people up to the fact that this is not just an issue for incarcerated folks. This is an issue for the entire community of folks to engage with the prisons in some way.
Right.
And one of the prisons that's had one of the earliest and worst outbreaks is actually a federal prison, Oakdale, which is in Louisiana. So we already know that there is the potential for spread in prisons. And outside of prisons.
And I imagine the communities around the prisons that facilitate and help service the prison is also at risk as well.
Absolutely. And they're also generally rural communities that don't have access to the same level of medical facilities or the same number of medical facilities.
Now,
so it's really a perfect situation for a lot of people to die.
Yeah. So what about the medical care? If you're ill in a prison, do you stay there, or is there a point where you're transferred out? Like, how does medical care work?
I was just about to ask that question.
You're going to ask the same question?
Yeah, so I was going to say, like, if somebody is showing symptoms, how do you quarantine them, and how do you best give them the care that they need when they are in such a tight, enclosed space and where space is generally limited?
So one of the early pieces of information we received was that the Department of Corrections was going to be taking people who needed to be isolated or quarantined to a facility that was closed a few years ago called Camp J, which is at Angola. And it was closed because of dangerous living conditions. It was too dangerous for people to live in safely. It was an isolation punishment block, and it is now being used to quarantine people who are at risk of COVID-19.
Wow.
The hospitals at Angola they've been sued multiple times over the past few years. There's pre-existing problems with the medical care. There is a point when folks get sick enough, and I'm not entirely sure what sick enough is in this context, where people are sent to outside facilities. So, for example, we know the longest serving woman in Louisiana, who's I think served 43 or 44 years, who has been approved for clemency. Her clemency petition is currently sitting on the governor's desk and has not been signed. She is in an ICU unit right now outside of the prison with COVID-19. She should be home. She's had her clemency approved by the board. She should be home. And instead, she is in the prison with COVID-19. She's in a hospital with COVID-19.
That's really just
in her 70s.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Heartbreaking. We've also heard calls to have people released from prison. Do you have a sense of how that's progressing? I know that's not what you do, but I imagine you've got a pulse on that too.
The restrictions on who would be allowed to be released are so severe in Louisiana that I think as of last count, they've released maybe 10 or 11 people.
Wow.
There have been some kind of higher profile cases that people are talking about, like I think Ray Nagin may be getting released, but they're in federal prisons, right? There's a completely different set of standards for federal prisons. Our state prisons are not releasing people. So there have been maybe a handful of people who are being released. There's been calls from reform advocates all around the country, really, asking for more people to be released. But right now, that's not happening.
That's not happening. Oh, my goodness. So I think the other question I have is sort of a little bit more personal, and you don't have to answer it if you don't want to, but I'm curious how you personally, emotionally and mentally survive this. And you chose this work, which is just hard and very rewarding when things go well, but just I imagined very hard and heartbreaking a lot of the time. And I'm curious how do you handle it? Like, you chose it, so like, first of all, why'd you choose this? Secondly, how are you coping now that like this extra thing has been put on to an already bad situation?
Good questions all around. So I used to be a defense investigator. I worked on death penalty appeals, and a lot of that was working. I worked, only after people were already on death row. And I eventually decided that I wanted to see if I could do something that was a little bit more proactive. And so I went to social work school. I became a social worker, and eventually I landed with Innocence Project New Orleans. And the highs are really high, right? When somebody is coming home after 40 years, right, and they're walking out of the prison, and you know that you're going to be able to help them and their family adjust. That is pretty unbelievable.
Yeah.
The lows are difficult. I think the mask project for me actually has really been one of the things that I'm doing to cope. It's difficult to feel like I feel like the things I do are valuable. I'm trying to provide support, by letter, by emails, by checking with family members. But there's not that much I can do. I can't go visit my clients. I can't make their lives materially better.
Yeah.
So when I'm feeling like there's nothing to be done, I can at least sit down and make some masks. And I know that's not going to solve the problem, but it's something concrete that I can do to try to do something tangible to help.
I feel the same way, actually. I have a lot of, I feel like I can't be in the hospital. I can't do many things, but I can make masks.
Exactly. And we can, try to raise awareness. We can do all of these other things as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's really how I've been coping.
Wow.
And one thing that I kind of saw in regards to this is what you signed up for. And granted, I saw this more in the context of doctors and nurses who are on the front line, but I think it's kind of applicable to your situation too, is yes, this is a line of work that you signed up for, mm-hmm. but you would no way signed up to be a part of something as gut-wrenching and as difficult as this is. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? I think that's something
nobody signed up for this.
Yeah. Is like
nobody could have expected this. But on the flip side, right? I mean, this is what social workers do. It is what you do. Yeah, it is. But at the same time, it's like nobody should have to feel like they are putting their life on the line for their occupation. And I know that's what a lot of doctors and nurses and other people like yourself, you're kind of on the tertiary of the medical field, but you are in a way. But I will say, I certainly want to make it clear, I'm not a frontline worker right now. I'm working remotely. I'm doing everything from home.
How do you feel are you able to talk to your clients, and how are they coping? Like, how as a social worker are you helping them to deal with a situation that they cannot get away from? I mean, I think that would be a very anxiety producing kind of overwhelming thing. And so we talked to another social worker recently, and it was really interesting to chat with her. I'm curious what your thoughts are about when you do talk to them, what do you say and how do you help them through this crisis?
So with our incarcerated clients, it's all been through emails. They call it emails, but it's a private company called JPay that provides email-like services for pay, and then through letters. So we started by just trying to provide accurate information was the big piece. We know how rumors spread in prisons. So we started sending in CDC guidelines, how to best protect yourself, adjusted for the prisons, right, with a lot of caveats of, we know that this is really hard to do. Here are the things that the CDC recommends. Here are some suggestions for ways that you can do those things in the prisons. So we started with information first. We've been getting a lot of letters and emails from folks who really just kind of want to talk to somebody and just need to sort of explain what's going on and know that people on the outside are paying attention has been a big piece. Is feeling like they're completely isolated. Nobody cares what happens to them. Right. And they're going to die in prison.
There's just this weird isolation of nobody knows, this island of do you try to get that message out to the media and others? And is there a problem with attorney-client relationships? How are you communicating what's happening without, you're talking to us, right? So do you have that issue as well?
Absolutely. And so we take confidentiality really seriously. We don't specify specific clients that we're talking about. If we're talking about patterns that we're seeing, we're always trying to make sure to anonymize that. Even with our released clients, it's really important to me that, they tell their own stories. We don't tell the stories for them. So we've been trying to have our clients really we consider them the experts. Our released clients are the experts. So we've been, if there's media opportunities, we always like them to really go directly to our released clients and talk to them directly about what the prison is like and about what that experience might have been like. We partner with some really fantastic community partners as Voice of the Experience, which is an organization run by formerly incarcerated folks for criminal justice reform. It's been doing a lot of organizing work. There's the Promise of Justice Initiative, which has been filing lawsuits and trying to get the Department of Corrections to safely release more people. It's been a pretty wide network of people who are trying to draw attention to the issue. And then with our release clients, a lot of the support work that we're doing is, as you can imagine, a number of our clients have PTSD from decades of wrongful incarceration. Right. So we were really worried at the beginning that the isolation, that the quarantining would bring back would trigger a lot of those same symptoms. So we contact all of our clients at least once a week. We have a really fantastic social work intern from Tulane and an Avodah fellow who've been helping me make sure that we are in constant contact with our clients, which means, things like helping them apply for unemployment benefits or SNAP or, other programs like that. Yeah. But it also means just being a person they can talk to when they're saying, like, I need to get out of here. Like, I don't even know how to handle being stuck here anymore. And we just talk to them and we let them talk and we check in with their families.
This is the time to be reaching out to all of the people that, think of
Absolutely.
And so
I think building that community amongst clients as well to make sure that they have other folks that they can talk to who've lived through similar experiences so that they call if they just need somebody who understands what it was like. And they can call and vent to them as well.
It's really remarkable that it's bred such community and connection, and it's pretty remarkable. I mean, I've got to say that, like, for all of this, that the outreach and connecting with humans is really like a key component of all of it. It's remarkable. Okay, so if people are listening and they're like, I want to sew for you, how do they connect with you, and how do they sew for you?
Excellent. You can go to our website, which is ip-no.org. We're calling our campaign the Flatten the Curve in Prisons campaign. There's a Google form on there that you can sign up, or you can contact us directly at clientservices@ip-no.org. We also have a very active social media presence. We have a Facebook event for the sewing process. We've been doing updates on there. And you can follow us on Instagram as well.
Okay, I'm going there because I always like just to make sure that I understand what you just said.
Cheers.
And your Instagram handle is?
_IPNO and then another underscore.
And IP stands for Innocent Project. So you can also put in Innocence Project, Innocence, INNOCENCE, Innocence Project New Orleans.
Right. And I would ask people, so there's, so Innocence Project New Orleans is its own nonprofit. It's a separate organization.
Oh, that's not you. Actually, it is you. No.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
But what I'm trying to say is that there's Innocence Projects all across the country as well. But if you search Innocence Project New Orleans, you'll come to us.
Then you'll get to that. And have you been connecting to the other Innocence Projects across the country? Is it a whole effort of prisons everywhere needing it, and the Innocence Projects being part of that across the country?
We haven't had as many people doing mass drives in other places, but we have been connecting with them about how to best support our incarcerated clients. So we've been checking in with each other, looking for successful strategies. The lawyers are connecting with each other about strategies for clemency petitions or trying to, most of the courts are closed. How do you have court hearings for innocent clients when the courts are closed? So it's been a lot of sort of resource sharing in that way too.
And so, okay, I'm at your website, so I want to make masks for you. How do I do now?
Great, let me pull it up.
I'm very concrete about this because people say things really fast, and I'm like, I don't know I don't understand.
Absolutely. So the link, I'm on this page so much now that I just go to the link directly, but it's ip-no.org and then /flatten the curve in prisons with dashes.
And how do we get to that here? Do we know? You can also just put it in the search.
You can also go to our Facebook page. Is probably the easiest place because we've been doing most of our updates there.
Yeah, and if you put into the search window, there's a little search right by donate, and it will get you to flatten the curve in prisons. So, so go to the Facebook page or go to the Innocence Project New Orleans, then go to the little search, and you'll get there. And it tells you all of the different things. And do you have a specific pattern that you're using? You don't?
We have a couple of examples that we've listed, but now that the prisons have eased the guidelines a little bit, we don't have to have people sew a specific pattern, which has been great. Awesome. So either elastic or fabric ties.
Right, and then you're just using a Google form to submit it. So you just put your name, your email, how many you can do.
Exactly, and we've been going around picking them up. We have some fabric donations from Rick Rack that we've been dropping off if folks want to help if they don't have fabric.
Awesome.
We don't have elastic right now, but we do still have a little bit of fabric.
Awesome, that's fantastic. And you can either mail them in or you can have them be picked up. And there you go. So flatten the curves in prisons. That's awesome. Well, thank you for all your time. And I'm really psyched about this. I mean, not psyched about this, but I'm really psyched to have chatted with you because I think it's a really another aspect of the story that we really need to understand. And that's insanely cool.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad that y'all are doing this, and thanks for letting me be here.
Awesome. All right, hold on.
Thank you.
You're okay with us posting this? Do you need to review it?
No, I think that should be fine.
That's my legal side.
No, I appreciate that.
All right, hold on just a second. So you've been listening to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School. And I'm Elizabeth Townsend Gard. If you like this podcast, keep listening. Also, we have a Facebook group. Come join us. We talk about a lot of things. We also have an Instagram account. And of course, most importantly, I really hope you get a chance to quilt today.